I know it's hectic. I know I'm rushing you. I've been hired to rushing you, so I'm do so. Sorry. Sorry. Hired. I was not hired. I was kindly requested by Mr. Graham Alabaster. Who is Graham? Where is Graham? So please take your seats and let us get started. With this session. Thank you. Yes, move to here. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you. I'm doing my best. So, panel number 6, it's a long day, I know, after lunch, but so we will make it dynamic as the promise is. All the panelists, Penny is here also. Sorry, we cannot put you on the same line, but you are just here. So, addressing the global housing crisis together and speaking about the World Urban Forum. Again and always, this is the topic of today's seminar with very prominent participation on this. So this panel is organized, obviously, in partnership with UN Habitat, who is the big host of the 13 WOOF, as we know from the very inception, and also the government of Azerbaijan. And I wanted also to take the host, Nizami Ganjavi International Center. My name is Kamelia Kemileva, and I'm the co-director of the Global Cities Hub, which is a Geneva-based organization. And in a moment, I will also introduce all the speakers. In the meantime, let me again, now that you're more or less seated, welcome you officially to this session, which is aligned with the theme of the upcoming World Urban Forum, focusing on global housing crisis, its implications for social stability, resilience, and sustainable development. This session is driven by the understanding that the global housing crisis is no longer a sector-specific challenge, and therefore our discussion here today will contribute to advocacy, but also policy efforts towards the 13th session of the World Urban Forum, which will be held, as you know already, from 17th to 22nd of May 2026 in Baku, Azerbaijan, one of the most beautiful cities in Central Asia, as far as I know. So we are looking forward to visit it. Our aim this afternoon is to surface key challenges, have a focused exchange, and generate perspectives that can inform the WOOF 13 call to action, which will be prepared by UN Habitat, by the Azerbaijan government, and related global policy agendas. At the outset, I wish to add that the Global Cities Hub, which is created by the city of Geneva, where we have the mayor, the Canton of Geneva, and the Swiss Confederation, is a Geneva-based multi-level organization with global scope, and we particularly appreciate the already outstanding organization and communication on WOOF, very structured, very professional, so personal thanks to the Azeri government, to UN Habitat, that so early in the year we have already the agenda, we can prepare on this. We appreciate a lot the new trend, which we assess as new, to have more policies, more practice exchange, and focus on one topic, which is the topic from all the angles, housing, but also, urban climate and other related issues. We appreciate the new leadership of UN Habitat, as we have you, Anaclaudia, with us. Thank you for being also in Geneva, as you're based in Nairobi, to move here and to brief the Geneva community. We value this approach. We value connection with other UN mechanisms, such as the UN Habitat-based open-ended working group on housing, where Azerbaijan is co-facilitator. So we have a perfect constellation to have more policy, but also other initiatives like the cooling initiative of the sister agency of UN Habitat, UNEP, which also does summits on cities and regions and others. And finally, we salute this sensitivity that we find enhanced in this WOOF, which is mixing the multi-level governance, all level of governments, national, local, regional governments, which is in the heart of the activities of the Global Cities Hub, and thank you for this. Now to get started, please allow me to officially introduce Ms. Anaclaudia Rossbach, Executive Director of UN Habitat, Mr. Anar Guliyev, Chairman, State Committee on Urban Planning and Architecture of the Republic of Azerbaijan, with 13 national coordinator, heavy title, so you will tell us a little bit more. Mr. Alfonso Gomez, Mayor of Geneva, and one of my bosses by this very function. Mr. Yves Leterme, sorry, we couldn't put you here, former Prime Minister of Belgium, and Ms. Penny Low, former Member of Parliament, Singapore. That was my opening remarks. Without any further ado, Anaclaudia, the floor is yours, and the microphone is there.
Thank you so much, Kamelia. I have the feeling I've been speaking a lot with you. You already know many of my thoughts, but in relation to the global housing crisis, perhaps I would say we have today a global housing crisis because of the dimension and the magnitude of the housing needs that we have today. We have, of course, some structural issues. Countries in the global south, they have been affected by poverty and inequality. So there, as I said yesterday, we have more than 1 billion people living in informal settlements, and these are the people who weren't able to access either the markets or the public policies. So they were at the margins of that. As has been structural, the size of the limited size of the markets in the global south vis-a-vis the purchase power of households. But then now we see also in many parts of the world an affordability crisis, right? And you see homelessness, for example, in many cities of the world that I travel, that I see. Even informality is rising in many cities, and even here in Europe, in the global north. So I believe we have globally a mismatch of supply and demand. There's also the migration flows, the demographic changes. Today we have less people per household or living in a single house that we had years ago. So there are changes and shifts. So there's an overall mismatch in terms of the supply of affordable housing, not housing at all, of affordable housing and the need for affordable housing. Certainly we have vacant spaces, underutilized apartments and housing, and this is an aspect of this kind of mismatch between what we need and what is offered and what people can rent or buy. And this has been a common denominator today and a global denominator. Interesting enough, housing is also something that brings us closer together in terms of different political directions and so on, because there is a broader recognition. I would say in terms of major factors that bring us together, perhaps I'll bring some elements. So one element is finance. And first we need more money for affordable housing, or to close this gap between what people can pay and what is the cost of the houses everywhere. Subsidies could be one way to overcome that, but we need certainly more money, more space, and we still have to shape the financial mechanisms that we have. We spoke before, in the session before, about gender and women, and I was remembering that, especially in Latin America, many banks are now creating special mortgages for women because they realized women are paying better and so on. So we need to have the right financial products, and the subsidies, they need to be very well calibrated, so to max out the capacity, the fiscal capacity of the countries. The second aspect is governance. And here we have the local level being represented by the city of Geneva. This is also a key means of implementation of our strategic plan. We need the local action. The local stakeholders, the local authorities and governments, they are closer to the communities, they're closer to the opportunities, they understand the territory, the territorial approach, they understand much better, and where's the potential to build, what not, who are the stakeholders, who are the partners, and so on. But At the national level, we have the policies, the urban policies, the housing strategies, the whole financial regulation that's being established at the national level, right? And the decision about public investments, the biggest bulk of money usually is concentrated at the national level overall in the world. So there's an adjustment in terms of finance, more money, make sure that this money gets through the layers of government, until the ground, and land where people mostly need it, and where, what the impact in the city will be, of a win-win and benefit for the overall society. So we need to have multi-level, efficient multi-level governance mechanisms to overcome that. And right now, what I see, what I have been observing, you see many local governments struggling to deal with the housing crisis with less instruments, but they are very innovative. And I see innovation all over the world in terms of how they manage to use the assets that they have, the ability of making partnerships and so on to find solutions for housing. And in relation to governance, there's also the participation of the civil society and the communities. And I know here in Switzerland you have a long trajectory of housing cooperatives. And in Brazil, where I come from, the social movements. But it's critical that, in thinking about the housing strategies, we are able to establish solid dialogues and get concrete inputs from these stakeholders, from the NGOs, from the civil society, because they know also very well about the territory, about what's available, and the opportunities out there. So this would be the second element. The third element is land. Land is the most expensive input for housing. Generally speaking, with some exceptions where after COVID, inflation in some places like United States and so on, perhaps they were exceptions where the construction costs were more representative than the land costs, but in general, and especially in the Global South, land is the most expensive input for housing. So here I will bring an element of the New Urban Agenda, which is our main document that we follow. It is the social and ecological function of the land. And we need to be able to incorporate this principle when we plan cities. And here, again, the connection with urban planning, and be strategic about how we plan our cities and how we use land. Because what's happening is that we are growing more in territory than in population, and this is no need. And the reason for this growth is housing. If we go to Africa, let's see Nairobi, where I live, we see the peri-urban growth, the growth in the peripheries of the city is poor people and slums. If you go to other places, you see gated communities for the rich and so on. So we have to be very careful about how we work with land. And I don't know my timing exactly, Kamelia, but you're looking at me. So just to close
I always look at you, Anaclaudia.
this segment,
It's not about time.
this segment, to tie everything up that I mentioned before, the finance, the governance, the land, and so on. And of course, we need capacity, and we see a diversity of capacity in terms of building houses or recycling the built environments and so on, and technologies that are socially, environmentally sustainable and so on. I think we need a new social contract on how we are going to...
Can we quote you?
Yeah. How we are going to, live as a society in the future, how our cities are going to unshape, and how we are going to house ourselves, yeah. But I think you're looking at me, so I feel that my time is expired.
I am always looking at you because you're the chief of the UN Habitat, and you always say very, very interesting things. Yeah. So that's not... It's true that we're a little bit late, and actually I just negotiated a very diplomatic protocol, and you were so kind, Mr. Guliyev, to agree. So exactly as Anaclaudia said, mayors are very close to the ground. They're really in charge sometimes of a very handy issues, and this is your case in Friday afternoon. So diplomatically, I apologize to, I still want to be invited to Baku, so please do not delete me from the list.
You have invitation.
But thank you so much. So giving the floor to Mr. Gomez, then he will slip out for an urgency, and Pascal Rapia, who is the chief of the external relations in Geneva, will come for the questions. So please.
Thank you very much.
Gomez.
Merci beaucoup. Sorry for this diplomatic way. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to begin by thanking the Republic of Azerbaijan and the UN Habitat for convening a discussion on housing, a topic that is very dear to me. Thank you for inviting me to join this conversation. The inclusion of mayors and the representative of local governments, as you said before, in the international fora is very much, of course, welcome. And I am very happy to share some insights on the housing crisis we are facing here in Geneva. It's a little bit strange because Geneva is a prosperous city, a global symbol of wealth and economic stability, driven by the presence of international institutions, of course, a powerful financial sector, very powerful, and one of the highest standards of living in Europe. Nevertheless, Geneva is facing a particularly acute housing crisis, revealing the limits of a model in which economic abundance does not guarantee the well-being of the entire population. Let us begin by emphasizing that in Geneva, housing is a major speculative asset on a central economic, social, and political issues. Real estate is largely owned by powerful institutional actors like pensions funds, insurance companies, and investment funds, making Switzerland and Geneva in particular a nation of tenants. 82% of households rent their homes, and will only 18% are homeowners. Homeowners. And since years, the vacancy rate has remained below the 1%. Actually, is the 34%. There is all that signals a housing shortage with a lowest level ever since in 2025. Among the reasons for this shortage is the combination of a strong population growth, boosted by the good health of our economy and the creation of many jobs and construction efforts that are unable to keep pace with population growth in what is an already very densely populated area. Geneva is the city in Europe with a high level of population at the square kilometers. Geneva is in some ways a victim of its own success. We also observe a reduction in household size with more and more people living alone, and also more and more people living older. That is a very important problem for us. The housing shortage has numerous consequences, including a continuous rise in rents, increased precarity, in particular among middle class and families, and a significant gap between existing and new leases, and a lack of residential mobility. In this context, what is the city of Geneva doing? First, it's important to recall that Switzerland is a federal country with 3 levels of authority. With regard to housing, and simplify somewhat, we can say that the Confederation sets the overall framework and legislates in particular on tenancy law. The canton enact their own housing and special planning laws and establish cantonal master plans that determine the main direction of territorial development. Cities, finally, are on the front line of the local realities. They are responsible for spatial planning, manage land use, and issue construction permits. Cities can also implement specific measures to encourage the construction of affordable housing through cooperatives, and in Switzerland, as you said before, are very important. They can acquire their own building. This is the case of the city of Geneva. And that is very important. It's very important to have its own buildings and its own land. Its owns have a substantial housing stock consisting for Geneva for 5,300 apartments. The city has chosen to implement a social housing policy dedicating 90% of its housing to social housing. And that is important to have several and different strates of the population. This municipal regulation defines allocations, rules, and rental conditions. For example, in Geneva, you rent for the social rent, not according to the apartment, but according to your salary. You increase your salary, you pay more. You decrease your salary, you pay less. This regulation enables the city to be fair and transparent in both the allocation of social housing and the setting of rents, and thus to offer affordable housing to those who need it most. At the same time, the city of Geneva encouraged housing production through partnerships with certain private developers, the provision of land acquisitions, the right of initiative for zoning plans and land use plans, and by exercising its right of preemption for the lands. In 1995, we also created a foundation for social housing, whose objectives are the constructions, purchase, and renovations of buildings intended primarily to low-income residents. Over the years, the foundation has become a benchmark in these fields, and thanks to numerous projects that provide high-quality housing for low-income families and will ensure social diversity within its buildings. And as I said before, that is very important for us, and mainly the downtown, in the center of the city, to have this social diversity. Today, more than ever, we place a strong emphasis on quality of life in neighborhoods centered on the essential ecological and social transition, which includes combating urban heat island, greening, protecting biodiversity, promoting soft mobility, and reuse among other measures. Finally, thank you. This overview would not be complete without mentioning the crucial roles played by the civil society through the housing cooperatives that offer controlled rents and participatory management, tenant advocacy associations that campaign for the tenants' rights and civic engagement in projects aimed at preserving affordable rents over the long term. These two ways are for us very important, and we would like to emphasize in this matter. First of all, the participation, the inversion of the authorities to have houses, to have land, and to have the possibility how do you say it, to have these lands. And the second way, to help the society, the citizens, to create cooperatives, because the cooperative ensures the control of the land without have an overview of speculation. But unfortunately, despite our efforts, the housing situation remains extremely strained. Under the effect of real estate speculations, rents are soaring, and there are fewer and fewer housing options accessible to middle and low-income households. The situation has forced by many tenants to leave Geneva in order to find suitable housing elsewhere, particularly in neighboring France, which has in turn led to raising housing prices and rent in those areas as well, without have a plan of management of their urban areas. It's a little bit chaotic, the development in some places around Geneva. Conclusion is housing is a fundamental right that we are all of us agree. Indeed, one that is guaranteed in Geneva by its constitution. Intrinsically linked to human dignity and prerequisite for access to many other essential rights, health, education, work, privacy. Local governments have the responsibility to do everything, of course, in their power to ensure that residents are to have access to adequate housing. However, a global and coordinated commitment from all stakeholders, both public and private, of course, is essential. But the most important is to give, and I think I am really convinced of that, to give to the public sector the tools to have the control of their development. That is really essential for the development that a city like Geneva. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, vraiment. So it was really concrete, and we know you want probably to say even more things, but you need to run, so Pascal will stay. Thank you so much.
But book your calendar for the World Urban Forum to share your experience.
Okay.
Already? Yeah, he has a lot of experience. Thank you so much. I need to rush. I'm so sorry, but time is running. You were so kindly and patiently, waiting, so please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. We are living in an era marked by deepening divides and rapid transformation. And by bringing together global leaders and practitioners, the Nizami Gencevi International Center provides a vital platform to reflect on how we can reshape multilateral cooperation to respond more effectively to one of the most pressing challenges facing humanity today, the global housing crisis. Nowhere else these dynamics more visible than in our cities. Across the world, rapid urbanization, population growth, and economic pressures are driving the expansion of informal settlements, undermining housing affordability and the tenure security. and further intensified by climate change, displacement, and demographic shifts, placing housing at the very center of the urban agenda. In this context, housing must be recognized not merely as a sectoral issue, but as a cornerstone of safe, inclusive, and resilient cities and communities, and as a powerful entry point for renewing multilateral action. Adequate housing is fundamental to social cohesion, public health, economic productivity, and climate resilience. When housing systems fail, divisions deepen between formal and informal, secure and insecure, opportunity and exclusion, and consequently progress on sustainability, equity, and economic development remains fragile and incomplete. The scale and complexity of today's housing challenges clearly exceed the capacity of any single actor. Delivering adequate and affordable housing for all requires renewed multilateral commitment, grounded in partnership and shared responsibility. Governments, international organizations, financial institutions, private sector, academia, and civil society must act in a coordinated and complementary manner, aligning policies, mobilizing innovative financing, strengthening land governance, and scaling up climate-resilient and people-centered housing solutions. At the same time, we must move beyond fragmented interventions toward integrated urban approaches, linking housing with transport, employment, social services, and environmental sustainability. This integrated approach is essential in cities if cities are to remain livable, competitive, and resilient in the face of accelerating global change. From Azerbaijan's experience, housing policy is most effective when it is embedded within integrated spatial planning and strong public institutions. Housing is treated not as commodity, but as a foundation for inclusive growth and social stability. Our housing policies are designed to ensure that low and middle income households and socially vulnerable groups have equitable access to decent, secure, and sustainable homes. These principles are embedded in the strategic roadmap on affordable housing approved in 2017, which defines our long-term vision and strengthens institutional mechanisms while expanding access to housing finance. To respond to the growing and diverse housing needs of our population, the government of Azerbaijan established MIDA, State Housing Development Agency, in 2016. Built on state-owned land and supported by government-provided infrastructure, MIDA projects offer homes at below-market prices to a wide range of beneficiaries, including teachers, civil servants, young families, and many other social groups. Implemented not only in Baku but also in the regions, these projects are designed as inclusive and well-connected neighborhoods, fostering social cohesion and quality of life. Approximately 80% of MIDA homes are supported by the Mortgage and Credit Guarantee Fund, established in 2005 as a key financial mechanism for housing development. The fund provides long-term preferential mortgage loans with interest rates of 3 to 6%, significantly below market levels. To date, more than 55,000 families have benefited from mortgage financing, exceeding 3.6 billion Azerbaijani manats, or almost 2 billion euro, while the number of eligible social categories has expanded from 7 to 17. Notably, around 70% of beneficiaries are young people, reflecting our strong commitment to empowering next generation. In parallel, the government implements a social housing program that provides homes free of charge to people with disabilities. Since 2019, we have also introduced a rent-to-own housing scheme, allowing low-income citizens to rent homes with the option to purchase over time. More than 8,000 families have already improved their housing conditions through this innovative approach. A particularly important example of transformative housing policy is Azerbaijan's ongoing reconstruction and resettlement efforts in the liberated territories of Karabakh and East Zangezur. Nearly 700,000 people lost their homes as a result of decades of occupation, requiring extensive temporary housing and social support. Today, guided by principle of building back better, comprehensive urban regeneration and housing programs are being implemented to create resilient, smart, and inclusive cities. Housing is provided free of charge by the state, demonstrating the role of public leadership in post-conflict recovery and long-term stability. To date, around 70,000 people have already returned to live, study, and work in these areas. As the central government body responsible for spatial planning, our committee ensures that housing development is fully integrated with efficient land use, environmental requirements, and modern technical standards, strengthening resilience and sustainability at the city scale. However, no country can address housing challenges alone. Delivering adequate and affordable housing for all requires a renewed multilateral compact, one that is inclusive, flexible, and responsive to diverse national and local contexts. This is particularly critical at a time of transformation, when climate risks, technological change, and demographic shifts are reshaping how cities grow and function. In this regard, the upcoming WUF 13th session of the World Urban Forum, which Baku will host from 17th to 22nd May, under the theme Housing the World, Safe and Resilient Cities and Communities, represents an important opportunity to translate multilateral dialogue into action. The discussions we are having today should directly contribute to the WUF 13 Baku call to action, ensuring it reflects the need for a renewed multilateral approach that prioritizes implementation and strengthens partnership. These perspectives should also fit into broader global policy agendas, reinforcing housing as a key driver of resilience, equity, and sustainable development. The WUF 13 call to action must be ambitious, but also grounded in practicality, equity, and measurable impact. In closing, let me emphasize that the global housing crisis is a shared responsibility and a test of our collective capacity to deliver meaningful change. This challenges us to rethink how multilateralism works in practice. And by strengthening international cooperation, empowering cities, placing people at the center of urban development, we can move toward a future where safe, adequate, and affordable housing becomes a universal reality. Thank you very much.
Teşekkür. Thank you. Thank you very much. We had the perspective of the UN agency, of the local representative, and now you did, the whole picture of the ambitions of your government, of WUF. Moving to another government in another country not far away from here. Monsieur Leterme, would you come here, or you?
No, it's okay.
Yeah, okay, okay. So, former Prime Minister of Belgium, please, floor is yours.
Thank you. Belgium. So let me maybe, in the interest of time and given my personal background, concentrate on 6, 7 very concrete points where I think that I'm 65 now and my future lays behind me. So, but looking back, I mean, in terms of policy making. Thank you very much. This was the reaction I wanted to have. So you make my weekend. No, seriously, 6 elements. Number 1, I think that notwithstanding the objectives and aims that are very valid and rightly pursued by lots of planning processes, I think we can make a lot of difference in mainstreaming them, in making them less time-consuming. I started my political career some 32 years ago as a deputy mayor in charge of housing and urban planning, and it happens even now today in my city that I'm biking and that I see a piece of land where things are happening, construction, and where I say, yeah, indeed, 30 years ago we were thinking about and we started the planning process. But this is not a monopoly of my city. I live in Paris, Paul also lives in Paris. Close to my place, they have been thinking about extending the metro ligne 1, the metro line 1. I think they already are in the planning process for something like 13 to 14 years, while at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, the metro line 1 itself was built, conceived, decided, and built in something like 18 to 22 months. I mean, number 1. So mainstream, improve the planning processes, of course keeping into account with rightly pursued aims and objectives and the rights for people to submit their remarks and criticism, of course. Second element, we have a big issue, at least in the places I know. I spent some time of my life in Stockholm, in Belgium, in Paris, and then traveling. At least in the cities that I know, policy makes a very important difference in terms of the geography in urban areas and within metropolitan areas. 70% of the world's population already lives or will live in a foreseeable period of time in metropolitan areas, but there is a terrible mismatch between the different activities and tasks that are fulfilled in a metropolitan area. I mean, once again, starting from daily life, when I see in Paris the time that people spend to commute, to work as a nurse in the center of Paris, to work as people that are cleaning the streets or do very dirty jobs, and that have to spend 1.5 to 2 hours time on the train to come to work for maybe 1,500 euros in a month. Meanwhile, the center of Paris being occupied by people that can afford to buy apartments per square meter, 15,000 sometimes euros a square meter. There is a terrible mismatch, and it is a failure of policy that we don't manage to have a better matching of activities and what I would call the internal metropolitan geography or urban geography. Number 3, I think we underestimate the capacity of new technologies to better serve the adequation of demand and offer in the housing market. Of course, there are Airbnb and Booking and so on, but why could not better be used also for what I call the informal housing market? And I come to point 4, especially considering that a home, a house, a roof is something that has a very different definition starting from the stage of your life. I mean, when you're building a family or when you get old, you have very different expectations, demands, but there is a lot of things to do to make the housing market more flexible in terms of transitions from one situation to the other, being an owner but buying a new apartment. And of course, public authorities there have an enormous responsibility also to adapt the taxation, the tax policy, to make it easier for people at a certain moment when they live with 2 people in an apartment of 150 square meters that they bought when they had 3 or 4 kids. I mean, these kind of transitions from the one stage of life to the other, I think is very important. Besides that, having a more holistic approach on what is the real need for people, again, in metropolitan areas, not only about the roof on top of their heads, but also in terms of the mobility they need, the care infrastructure they need, I think would help a lot. 5th element, based on my humble experience, also recently being involved in trying to design policies to better tackle issues like homelessness and extreme poverty. I think in terms of subsidiarity, we have a lot of progress to make. I think to put it in a nutshell, that planning and financing needs scale, but customization, adaptation to the real needs leads localization. And you still have, I worked a little bit in constitutional policy and so on, you still have a lot of countries, even member states of the European Union, where there is a fundamental misallocation of the competences, where the local authorities are too much involved in trying to find money for their projects, and national or subnational regional authorities are not involved in trying to source money. Last but not least, indeed, money. I think there is a lot of money going on in the economy. There's a vast, very impressive amount of money, but we need better adapted instruments for the blended financing that is needed for, let's say, what's not served by the market forces. And this tends to be a very important part of the responses to the need for adequate housing. And so bringing together private, public, and philanthropic financing, having real concessional loans that are well designed and that attract financing, also because well, there's a very huge demand for long-term stable income also, for pension funds, for long-term investment. I think there's a lot of work to do to conclude with a very little experience in that field. I happen to be a citizen of the European Union, and when I took up the responsibility for the European Platform on Combating Homelessness, one of the first institutions I was thinking about was the European Investment Bank. Green Deal, housing, social policy, and so on. Well, my conclusion was that the European Investment Bank may be the biggest development bank in the world in terms of assets it manages, but to my humble opinion, it's sometimes not so much a bank, and it's not so much about investment. And there was, in any case, a fundamental lack of capacity for that bank to offer a solution adapted to the demand. So I think very concretely we should work at better mobilizing the existing vast amount of money that is interested in long-term financing investment with a little bit lower reward, but where I think the right instruments are still missing, and where, let's say, engineering tailor-made solutions for the specific demand is not the speciality of the people that are managing these institutions. I stop there in the interest of time.
Thank you. So, no, we can listen to you, I can swear, the whole afternoon, but yes, that's the thing. So, rushing, we are already out of time, but Penny, you will have absolutely your time. Just one thing I have to reply to you. You speak a little bit like the mayor of Zurich, and by the way, Zurich, which has even more problems than Geneva, started to expose people. One person who lives in 6-room flats, exposed. It's now a practice. A person went to the federal tribunal, and the city of Zurich actually had gain. And now in Zurich, this is a practice. They expose people who live alone in a 6-room flat to install families. You can say it's amazing, but it is happening. So this made me think about this. Penny, floor will be yours. I'm Bulgarian, you're my former president, so obviously I can't say anything else. You have to give the floor to Penny, and then Mr. Plevnev, former president of Bulgaria. You have 30 seconds, so please go ahead. Sorry for this. I have a selfie with you 10 years ago. We will.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, first, thank you very much to NGSC, especially Rafshan and Reza, and of course UN Habitat for the invitation to this panel. Housing has always been more than just a wall and a roof, and very often if we see it just as an object like that, we become impassionate about it. But, it's really where, dignity lives and where the future begins. Some statistics suggest that right now, over 300 million people have no home at all, and close to 3 billion actually lives in inadequate housing. I think you wouldn't have the right figures better, but, this is what I got. And no thriving city that I know of is actually built on homelessness. And this is our generation's moonshot, one that I think we cannot afford to miss. Behind these numbers are children who are doing their homework under streetlights, nurses and teachers commuting for hours because they cannot afford to live where they serve. I think a point that was mentioned by our Belgium president. And families displaced again and again.
Belgium is a kingdom. It's very sensitive.
Okay, all right. I take back my words. Families are displaced again and again by floods and storms. Around 1.1 billion people actually now live in informal settlements, especially in Asia and in Africa. There's no safe water, sanitation, tenure, and of course this is all exacerbated by climate change and extreme weathers. So I think the crisis is a very urgent one, and one that has to be addressed, not just by one single party, but collectively. And I want to share the example of Singapore. Singapore in the 1960s was also a housing emergency We look at Singapore today and we say, oh, it's good and well, but in the 60s, people had nowhere to live. The rivers were so dirty, and there was a water crisis as well. So it wasn't a place that was palatable, so much so that even the Federation of Malaya thought that we couldn't bring much value to the federation itself. The government then, decided to make a very radical choice, which is to treat housing as essential infrastructure and not just residual social policy. So through what we set up called the Housing and Development Board, HDB, it then, endeavored to build tens of thousands of homes in a few years, and then linked housing to national savings so that ordinary workers could own their homes. Today, over 80% of Singaporeans live in public housing, and over 90% of them are homeowners. It's a lofty goal because the goal then was 100% home ownership. It's a moonshot, but if you fall short, it's 90%, that's still, very good, right? So housing, became the quiet infrastructure of everything else. It is where health begins, it is where education is anchored, where jobs become reachable, where people's hearts are secured, a sense of belonging to the land itself, begin to manifest, that they have a stake in the country and they have a reason, a motivation to work harder in their lives, for their families, for their children. So I say this not just as someone who looks at housing or, as a policymaker, but also as a town builder. I've built a town called the Punggol new town, which won the accolade of being the first eco town in Singapore and also in the tropics. It's now also fast becoming the first digital town in Singapore, creating some 28,000 jobs. When it first started, I started it and I did it from scratch. I chaired the Town Development Task Force for over 13 years. And when it was first started, people thought I was crazy. I had a lot of obstacles, all the issues that, any, mayors or, town developer faces, from finance to planning to design, I got them all, and not all the ministries or agencies were with me on this because they thought, well, why don't you just go with whatever blueprints we have instead of, trying for a moonshot. But I thought to myself that this is, when we build houses, this is not just about building houses, concrete walls, but this is about building a home. And home is also, from two words, H-O-M-E. So H-O, is hope, coming from the word hope, and M-E coming from the word memory. So it's hopes and memories, which means that, in building the township, in building the houses, and also in overcoming the obstacles, we need the collective help from all the residents who are living there or who are going to live there. So it's got to be a participatory way of, building houses. Because only when they, like I said, have a stake, they feel for it, that they would be motivated to do a lot more and to make that dream turn into reality. So the lesson from Punggol itself is simple. With political will, with technical excellence, with community engagement, dreams on paper can become communities on the ground. And what we did in one town must also, inform us of what we can do for other cities. Every country is different, I recognize that. The cities all have different challenges, but I think there are some universal lessons that can be shared and propagated elsewhere. But moving forward, the big question I have is, what is a better model of urban development in the intelligence age, where AI is changing the way that we work, play, and live? Megapolis used to be the call, but, could it be that, a connected, distributed township would be, a better model going forward? I was informed that I have 1 minute left, so I think I have to, squeeze 10 minutes into 1 minute now. But just to say that I think, there are a few issues that came up that was mentioned earlier on, whether it is on land tenure, on financing, and other obstacles. I believe that there are certain models out there, for example, community land trust, that separates ownership of land from ownerships of home to make housing more affordable, digital and even blockchain-based land registrations to make registries, to allow more transparency in the dealings and all, again, and also in lowering cost, matching finances to real lives itself, so that, it becomes affordable to every citizen and every resident. Well, a whole lot of others, but I'm feeling the pressure, the time pressure. But suffice to say, and then of course construction methods that can lower cost. Suffice to say, I think what I really hope to see in the upcoming World Urban Forum 13 in Baku is really, to have the Baku call to action that sends very clear messages. 3. First, housing is core infrastructure, and national and local governments must budget for it as seriously as they do for transport, energy, and so on. Second, secure tenure for all. The tenure is important. And it could be legal reforms, digital registries, CLTs, cooperatives, upgrading, a whole lot of others, but they must converge towards one outcome, which is people should not live in fear that a knock on the door will mean they lose everything overnight, but there should be assurance, of the right to home. And third, and finally, climate resilient, people-centered delivery at scale, because we are experiencing a lot of climate change issues, apart from the AI tsunami, and we need to really build the houses with that in mind, rather than just, building for building's sake. So, all in, when we house people, we do not just want to change the way they sleep. I think we want to change what they can dream. So on that note, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Guliyev, Ms. Rossbach, you have one sentence to finish this, and you have 1 minute to think about this one sentence, which I give to Mr. Plevnevlev. 1 minute.
Thank you. I was your president, but also I was your minister of housing, of construction, of planning. All of my lifetime I was doing real estate, and even today I'm working in a huge American fund that owns 4,000 apartments in 2,000 buildings in the US. The situation is there, it's gonna get worse. I wanna make a very clear projection what's coming to us in the housing politics, and I just want to give a very quick solution. The problem we have is governments are over-indebted. If you look at the United States, France, whoever just mentioned, the UK and many others, they created mountains of debt. It's going to get worse. And the very simple question is, if the government's over-indebted, how do they clean up their debt? The only way to do that is, A, war. Let's hope we do not run for war. 2, inflation. Inflation is helping governments cleaning up the mess of huge debt. That's coming in the United States big time. It's going all over the place. And if you have inflation, then the very simple exercise is how do you hedge against inflation? What do you do when inflation is on a long term coming on the horizon? The biggest losers of inflation, of course, are ordinary people. Always like that in the human history. You buy real estate. Because actually, and also if you look at the situation next year that to come, I would project that all those enthusiasm in AI is going to balance. Huge amounts of money that have been pushed there are going to balance again. The only alternative again back then, probably 2026, 2027, I would project is real estate. The very simple question is to cities, to governments, to mayors, we don't have much time because more speculative capital will be on the way to hedge inflation. And here is my suggestion. We need to be quick as possible in order to help those in need to do something. First of all, construction permission all over the European Union is too slow, too expensive. In Germany, you wait 5 years. In Switzerland, probably even more to get a construction permit. How do you change that? There are a lot of ways to do so. Transparency in planning, transparency in transportation, quick construction permits. Greece is a very good example in the last years how they changed everything from waiting 3 years to waiting 4 months. In my country, it's 3 months to get a construction permit. And last but not least, taxation, local banks, fixing interest rates, that is all working well. And the last but not least, I want to point to something nobody talks about, flexibility in construction standards. Construction has been extremely expensive. It's too much regulated. It's a matter of a great bureaucracy. You don't have any flexibility. That makes it extremely expensive. Not just in Europe, but also in the United States. You can have certain flexibility in construction standards so that you make sure people stick to standards, but it's getting cheaper to build, and of course then to make sure that people can afford something. Last but not least, really time is coming for a huge new wave of speculative investment. Let's be ready for that, and also it's a matter of policies to make sure that there will be a justice and balancing in the system. As you see, even the President of the United States is talking about stopping investment of institutional investors. This is something we need to very carefully think in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you so much, really. One sentence and we run. And Anaclaudia, one sentence and we run.
Thank you. I just want to thank, first of all, to Nizami Gencev International Center for this opportunity. I think we have amazing discussion. There are so much experienced people in this room, and we don't have enough time. I would suggest to continue this discussion, definitely at World Urban Forum in Baku, but even before and after that, why don't we have separate sessions, because there are great ideas, you have amazing experience. Why don't we spend some time to talk how we can implement this, how can we change the situation. You already said how, but maybe a bit more tactical advices. Thank you very much for all of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you read my mind, Anna, because I was exactly thinking about that. If we could have the opportunity to have a little bit of, a couple of more discussions and go more in depth when we go to Baku, we are much more advanced in terms of the thinking that we can share with a bigger audience. So if we can plan that in certain areas that we discuss here, the regulations, the finance, the planning and the city and the political aspects and so on, that would be great. But I ended my first intervention talking about social contract, and I believe the Baku event can help us to set up the coalition that can sustain the social contract. So I hope that we also see each other in Baku. Thank you. And thank you for everything. This
Thank you.
has been amazing support. Yeah.
Obrigada, and big applause for everyone.